Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzhak Ruvain speaking to you from south of Jerusalem here in the land of Israel, the holy, beautiful, sacred land of Israel. Today is second day of Mar Cheshvan, 5784. It's October 17th, 2023. This coming Shabbat we read Parshat Noach, otherwise known in English as Noah, Noach in Hebrew. It is the second reading, of course, of the book of Genesis, and it begins in Genesis chapter 6 verse 9, concludes chapter 11 verse 32, and of course, just like last week's edition of Temple Talk was a special war edition, so too this week we'll be talking a lot about what's going on here in Israel, and seeing it reflected, or seeing reflections of the Parshat Noach, of the story of Noach, the flood, what led up to it, the aftermath, seeing all that reflected in what's going on now in Israel and around the world. A lot of very important insights that we can gain from a close reading of Noach. Some of them are very painful, but they have to be addressed and faced and looked in the eye. The world is in a very bad place right now, and it needs fixing. And who's going to fix the world? That is the question. I mentioned that it's the second day of the month of Mar Cheshvan. We're in a new month. We had a 2-day Rosh Chodesh celebration in the Holy Temple. Offerings would have been made on the first day of Mar Cheshvan. Very quickly talk about Mar Cheshvan, then we're going to go into Noach and the war. What I want to mention about Mar Cheshvan is that it is the actually 8th month of the year when we begin counting the year from Nisan, the month of the Exodus, which we're told in the book of Exodus is the first of our months, but there is also the second civil calendar, Hebrew calendar, and that begins with Tishrei, which was just last month. So in the civil calendar, Cheshvan is the second month, and Cheshvan also is sometimes referred to as Mar Cheshvan, and the word Mar means bitter, and the historical explanation has been that it's bitter because there's no holidays in Cheshvan, and certainly following the holiday-packed month of Tishrei, in which we had 22 days of either holidays or in-between holidays, which even those in-between days were special days that had special tefillot, special prayers, special preparations, special things that needed to be done. So we had 22 straight days of holiday observance. And all of a sudden now, in the month of Cheshvan, Mar Cheshvan, we have none. And, of course, that can be described as bitter. But I've always added that in modern Israel, we actually have two newly holidays that are newly observed here in the land of Israel, and one is the 6th of Cheshvan, which is the anniversary of the day that Rambam Maimonides went up to the Temple Mount and prayed on the Temple Mount some 800 and some years ago, and he wrote that it should be marked as a special day of Thanksgiving and a holiday for his descendants forever and ever. And we are certainly his spiritual descendants, and so we have begun observing what we refer to today as Rambam Day, Yom HaRambam, the day that he went up to the Temple Mount. And of course he wrote the laws, the rules. He didn't create them. He gathered up what was written, what was known from the Gemara, from the Mishnah, from the Talmud, and put them into his Mishnah Torah, his book of Jewish law. And so he certainly knew how to behave on the Temple Mount. He knew what was permitted and what wasn't permitted, and he went up to the Temple Mount. So he is just one of any number of our sages in the past who went up and prayed on the Temple Mount even after the destruction of the Holy Temple. It's very important, though, that he actually recorded this and acknowledged it, and and marked it as a day of gratitude and thanksgiving for his prosperity, for his posterity. That's the word, for his posterity forever and ever. Second holiday, which I'm going to only mention briefly now, we'll talk about it later, more in depth later in the month, is Sigd, which is celebrated on the 29th day of Cheshvan, exactly 50 days following Yom Kippur. It is a holiday, ancient holiday of the Ethiopian Jews, which they brought with them in their recent historic modern Aliyah return to Israel. They're the oldest of all the Israelite diasporas, exiles, and they are among the newest of the returnees, the most recent. Tremendous history, tremendous tradition, and just very briefly, Sigd was a day that began as a fast and ended as in feast. But it was a day of longing for Israel, for Jerusalem, and for the Holy Temple. And we'll be talking about that more, as I said, in upcoming weeks. But right now, let's get back to Parshat Noach, and we'll just read the first few verses in Hebrew, then in English. Ele toledot Noach, Noach ish tzadik tamim haya badorotav, et Elohim italech Noach, vayeled Noach Shlosha banim et Shem et Ham et Yafet. These are the offspring of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. Ish tzadik tamim, perfect in his generations. Tamim badorotav. Et Elohim italech Noach. He walked with Hashem. Well, he walked with God. The only other person so far that we've read about that walked with God was, of course, Hanoch, who was the 7th generation of mankind. And there's a whole very, very ancient tradition about Hanoch. Again, not for now. We have other things to talk about. But Noach, he lived, as we already learned at the conclusion of the last week's Parsha, Bereshit. We learned that things had gone from bad to worse in terms of mankind's behavior. 10 generations. Noach is the 10th generation. And his behavior has become despicable, depraved. People are just taking from other people. There's violence. There's total disregard for human dignity, for human life. And God's had enough. He regrets. Imagine that, Hashem regretting that he ever created man. Man was God's finest creation, God's greatest hope for creation. And man has so disappointed God in 9 generations that God throws up his arms, as it were, and says, I just can't. I'm going to destroy man. But there was one righteous person, Noach. Imagine. Just one righteous person in the world. We sometimes talk about whether he was as righteous as Abraham was, and we're not going to get into that discussion right now. Let's talk about today. What's going on today? Well, before we get to that, I'm just going to read a little bit further, okay? I'm going to read a little bit further in our Parsha, where it says, we're still in chapter 6, verse 11. Now the earth had become corrupt before God, and the earth had become filled with robbery. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupted, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. Okay, and God said to Noach, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with robbery through them. And behold, I am about to destroy them from the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood, etc., etc. Let's read this in Hebrew. Vatishachet haaretz lifnei haElohim, vatimale haaretz Hamas, Hamas. Vayar Elohim et haaretz v'hine nishchata ki hishchit kol basar et darko ala haaretz. Vayomer Elohim lenoach ketz kol basar ba lefanai ki mala'ah haaretz Hamas mipneihem v'hineni mashchitam et haaretz. Hamas. You get that word? I keep saying it. Hamas. Right? We have Hamas today. Hamas is the word translated here as robbery. Actually, Hamas means much more than that. It means what it means today. It means total disregard for human dignity, human life, disregard for contempt of God. contempt of everything decent. This is what the world was filling with in the days of Noach. This is what so disgusted God. This is what God despaired of, that this is what become of man. The earth was full of Hamas. Look around today. It's not just Israel that was attacked by Hamas last week. And again, more and more details come out every day about what transpired. They are unbelievable. They are despicable. They are unacceptable. And if you are on social media or are paying attention, you'll know what I'm talking about. Don't let the deniers succeed in trying to cover it up. It happened. It happened. Infants, children were tied together and set on fire alive. They burned alive to death. Children were murdered in front of their parents. Parents were murdered in front of their children. Rape, mutilation, etc., etc. We talked about it last week. I'm not going to dwell on it this week, but know that it happened. Know that it really happened. Don't let anybody ever tell you that it didn't happen. And they're trying to. They're trying to deny it. It happened. This was Hamas. And the world is filled with Hamas today. Why do I say that? Not only do they have are part of the whole Iranian tentacles that are trying to squeeze the life out of Israel and the Middle East and the world, because believe me, Iran has its eyes on Europe and on America. But look at the support Hamas is getting all throughout the world. And in the major cities and universities, American universities, Hamas has supporters. Among the Ivy League has supporters. This is known as the world is filled with Hamas. This is exactly what Parshat Noach, this is exactly what Torah is talking about here. This is the corruption that we're experiencing today. So when we talk about Noach, one man, righteous, I hope today, I believe today there's more than one man, but each one of us is that one man. Each one of us is that one person. And together, if we are together, we are one righteous entity that has to fight back, that has to destroy. You know, after the flood, we read that God promised, Noach, I'm not going to do this again. I am not going to wipe out all mankind in anger. And when God said that, he was handing over a tremendous responsibility to mankind. God wasn't saying, listen, I don't care anymore. He wasn't saying, listen, I can't, I don't have the stomach for this anymore. He was saying, this is your responsibility now. You know, I rescued you. I told you to build that ark. I told you to get in it. And I told you when to get out. But from now on, it's your responsibility. It's on your shoulders. It's on your head. You have to deal with it. And when the world is filled with Hamas, you, righteous Noach, have to destroy it. You can't simply hide in an ark. You have to be out there. You have to be active. You have to wipe it out. Just like we wiped out Amalek, just like we're commanded to wipe out Amalek, so we must wipe out Hamas, which is today's Amalek. There's no wiggle room here. It has to be done. Because if we don't wipe out Hamas, then Hamas will wipe us out. Hamas, again, refers to these basically Nazis in Gaza who have the support of the Gazans, by the way. People talk today about, but there's 2 million Gazans and they're innocent, they have nothing to do with this, and Israel's got to, watch out for their human rights and has to be careful and proportionate. First of all, now they're saying about 3,000 Gazans entered into Israel to perform their massacre, their slaughter and their torture and mutilation. And Hamas is saying, it wasn't all Hamas, it was also regular people from Gaza. They joined in. They're the ones who did the worst things. So guess what? There's no assumption of innocence here in Gaza. They voted for Hamas. They put them in office. They put them in power. And they still have the support of the people. And believe me, when they kill Jews, when they kill Israelis, their support skyrockets. So don't tell me that it was simply Hamas and you have to separate them from Gaza. No. The Gazans are complicit. I know that there are Gazans who don't like Hamas. I know there are Gazans who have also been victimized by Hamas. I know that. But in war, we can't make that distinction. We can't allow this distinction to in any way impair our war effort. You know, in Nazi Germany, there were Germans who did not agree. There were Germans who hated the Nazis. But the Allied forces didn't have the luxury of checking out who was who before bombing Dresden, for example. Nor, by the way, did the American and their allies make any differentiate between who's who when routing out ISIS. Tens of thousands of innocent people, civilians who weren't part of ISIS, weren't part of the conflict, were killed by American forces, by American bombs, etc., etc. That's the way it goes. That's war. And when you have a war against an implacable, monstrous enemy, you have to fight it. And I pray that Israel fights this relentlessly and does not cave into world pressure, which already, you know, everybody was shocked and everybody was in Israel's corner when this happened for about 24 to 48 hours, and then immediately, well, Israel, you have to be careful, you have to consider this and that. Believe me, the world does not give Israel the freedom of movement that it allows itself. But Israel has to ignore that. I pray that our government will ignore that and that our army will be given the freedom it needs to completely and utterly defeat, destroy Hamas. It's them or us. And I'm telling you people, it's them or humanity. Because humanity cannot survive with animals like this in our midst. They have to be destroyed. And if not, they'll go after everybody. That's for sure. And already we see the violence of Hamas supporters all over the world. You know, they're going after Jews all over the world. And they're attacking the police who are trying to stop them all over the world. If we don't put an end to it, it's just the beginning. Anyway, this was the decadence and the depravity of the world in the days of Noach. And Noach was a good man that feared God and that listened to God. And he built an ark. You know, the word ark has multiple meanings, really, I guess. In English, it refers to the boat that Noach built, and we also use it later referring to the Ark of the Covenant. In Hebrew, however, there are two different words. The Ark of the Covenant is an aron, which in modern Hebrew means cabinet, which makes sense. The aron was a type of a cabinet. But the boat, the ark that Noach built, is called a teva, Taf Yud Beit He, teva, which is again also the word used for the little ark, as it were, that Moshe's parents placed him in, infant Moshe. When they could no longer hide him from Pharaoh, they placed him in an ark, a teva, and placed him in the waters of the Nile. But the word teva in Hebrew also has another meaning, a very common meaning, and that is word. Another word, the word for word in Hebrew is teva. And of course, there's tremendous power, tremendous force in our words, what we say, what we read, what we study, what we learn. The Torah is filled with words. And when we immerse ourselves, when we put ourselves in our teva, if we put ourselves in a teva of Torah, of God's words, of good words, of proper words, we are creating an armor around us and that armor helps us get through times like this. It's very important that we surround ourselves, just like Noach was surrounded by the four walls and the deck and the roof of his teva. We have to, if you hear that noise in the background, that's a Israeli jet flying overhead, heading toward Gaza. We hear them quite frequently. But protect yourselves. Protect yourselves with proper words. Use your words properly. Words can penetrate. Words can kill. Words can bring to life. Words can destroy our enemies. Words can bring life and light. So be very conscious of your words, especially in these times. And remember, it was the teva, the word, that protected and kept Noach going throughout the worst, hardest times of the flood that he and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives lived through. And we want to be, we're all children of Noach, right? We're all b'nai Noach. We all are children of the covenant that Noach made with Hashem, a covenant that would guarantee human dignity, justice, humanity, that would ban inhumanity, that would ban depravity. And we have the responsibility always to uphold those rules, those 7 rules, those 7 mitzvot Noach, the covenant of Noach, the covenant that Hashem emblazoned in the rainbow. It's our responsibility. It is our responsibility to destroy those who abrogate that covenant, because that means they are of the generation of the flood. If you're not part of the covenant of Noach, then you are part of the generation of the flood, and you need to be removed from this earth. So, as I said, we all are b'nai Noach, and of course, Israel, the Jewish people, we have an additional covenant that imposes even more do's and don'ts that we also adhere to. But as I said, the covenant of Noach is universal. And by the way, here in Israel, over 1,300 Jews Israelis were murdered in the massacre that transpired just under 2 weeks ago. And I just want to mention that it wasn't all Jews. There were also Christian Arabs and Muslim Arabs, Druze and Bedouins, who were not accidentally but deliberately targeted as well. Some of them in our defense forces, and some of them in our medical emergency medical units. I want to mention just one amazing story. There have been so many stories of heroism, of people who were who were there when the attack took place, and were surprised, as was everyone else, but they had the wherewithal and to get it together, and to get other people together, and to fight back, and to defend, and to save lives. Some of those people fell. Some of those people saved lives, came back to fight more, saved lives, came back to fight more, saved lives, came back to fight more, 3rd, 4th, 5th time, and fell. They weren't thinking of themselves, they were thinking of saving lives. Many of them were young people 19, 20, soldiers. A young woman, 20 years old, rescued many people. Another young woman who was in charge of the security on her very small town, a few hundred families. was able to organize and completely defend her town. There are stories like this of people who were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles away. They heard what was going on. They got in their car, they drove down there, they had a weapon, and they saved lives. And again, many of them fell. I'm just going to mention one story which just only recently it was made public, and that was in a certain, the terrorists not only attacked towns, they attacked military, army bases, and one base had a number of gashashim, which are scouts. And many of the gashashim in Israeli army are Bedouin, because they have a very, very, very deep understanding of the lay of the land. And they were there, as well as other Jewish soldiers, who many of them had their families with them because it was a holiday, and families came to visit them. Nobody was expecting trouble. They should have been, but nobody was expecting trouble, and so they were under attack. And so one of the gashashim, one of the scouts, took off his shirt, so he just had a white undershirt on, so he no longer could be identified as an Israeli soldier, and he went out into the open, where he knew there were a bunch of terrorists, hiding behind bushes and things, and he called to them, "Come guys, come here, in Arabic, and they assumed he was one of them. So they all came out, approached him, and as they got close, he pulled out his weapon and mowed them all down. That's a hero. Lots of stories like this, stories of medical personnel who were heroes, who rescued people under fire. It's incredible, the stories. But I want to mention one other thing. In Israel, there's always been a controversy that many of the ultra-Orthodox don't serve in the army. They have a pass if they are studying in yeshivot, if they're studying Torah. Many people find that to be unfair. They're not sharing the burden. And that is an ongoing controversy here in Israel. Now I want to mention also that there are many Haredim that do also serve in the army, but a very large number do not. But the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox community here in Israel, has, over the past, I think since the beginning of Oslo, which was 30 years ago when it became an imperative, has created a number of organizations, many organizations, but there are a couple that are very relevant to today's situation, and those are rescue organizations. First arrive medical attention on accident, any kind of car accident, someone hiking, in nature and has an accident, or, of course, a terror as well. And they often put themselves in danger by being the first to arrive on the scene. But another group is called Zaka. And Zaka was first created in order during the time soon after the Oslo Accord, when Palestinian terrorists began exploding themselves on Israeli buses, killing many people and exploding their bodies all over the street. And Zaka came in order to make sure that they could collect every piece of human anatomy for proper burial, for the respect of the dead, to give proper respect to the dead. That's all it's about. Person is gone. They've been blown to smithereens in the case of these bus suicide attacks, and their whole mission was to bring their entirety of their body to proper burial. So they have since become a very, very strong organization, and it's not a government organization. It's private, as in it's they survive on donations, and they were called in to take bodies out of these towns where the massacre was, And they have said that they had never, ever witnessed or imagined they could witness what they witnessed. The scenes that they witnessed of bodies, of what clearly was done to these bodies before they arrived. And I just want you to know that these people, they may not be physically putting their bodies in physical danger. They're not in the army. However, they are in physical danger because while they were arriving, there was still violence happening around them, not to mention rockets overhead, which could land at any moment because a lot of the rockets are still landing in that area. And there were some battles occurring while they first arrived. But they are endangering their souls, because what they see, what they're witnessing, what they're having to deal with is so horrific that they're paying a huge price of their emotional and spiritual well-being. A huge price. They're going to suffer post-stress traumatic syndrome. Is that how you say it? Just like a soldier will. Absolutely they will. Because what they've been witnessing is horrific beyond words. I have heard interviews with them, and with some of their veterans who have been doing this for years and years and years. They've seen some horrible things in the past, but nothing that comes close to what they've had to deal with in the depravity, in the horror, and in the sheer number. Next time the issue comes up, bear in mind that there are ultra-Orthodox Jews that put themselves in the line of danger. And they put themselves in very, very, very real, emotional, spiritual, life-threatening situations. There's no doubt about it, and we owe them a tremendous gratitude. And again, their objective is to be able to bring people for proper burial. And we all know anybody who is a part of any religion or whatever knows the importance of proper burial for maintaining our love of life and respect for life and respect for death. Not to mention that when soldiers were first called up, there was a lot of things they were missing. They didn't have time to bring. The army wasn't ready yet. And one of the things that people said, we don't have tzitzit. And so, people were donating tzitzit, and now there are ultra-Orthodox groups who are, they're tying the tzitzit. They're mass-producing tzitzit, now they're going straight to the soldiers. And prayer books, books of Tehillim, books of Psalms are being published, and they're just being published and sent to the front lines. They're not for money, but for the war effort. So Israel's in this together. We always have a few, outliers. There's always a few rogues that can't seem to ever, lose their own ego and their own whatever and try to spoil things. But we are together, and we are going to win this. There's no doubt about that. As I said, there's really no choice, just as there was no choice for Noach but to brave that storm and eventually rest on peaceful shores. Thank you so much for being with me. Temple Talk.